Hey guys, it's Alex from DolfansNYC, ready to get you prepared for Week 13. In most leagues, that means it's the final week before the playoffs, meaning it's time to exploit matchups even more so than usual. Before we get to this week's starters, I need to apologize for a player I recommended last week.
I'm sorry, so sorry.
I recommended benching Miles Austin against a solid Raiders secondary last week, and he put up 145 yards and a touchdown. I broke 2 cardinal rules of fantasy. Never trust a player with 2 first names, and never ever bet on the Raiders.
You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em.
Let's get to the players you should start this week.
Put me in cold, I'm ready to play.
The Chiefs have given up over 300 passing yards and 2 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, meaning Kyle Orton, yes, that Kyle Orton, is a viable fantasy starter this week. Our old friend Matt Forte hasn't done much in the last few weeks, but a matchup against the Rams defense that has given up at least 100 yards and a touchdown in all but 3 weeks this season makes him a must-start this week. It's a bit of a risk, but Steve Smith of the Panthers could have a good week against Tampa Bay with Matt Moore starting for an injured Jake Delhomme. The Bucs have given up multiple touchdowns in 3 of the last 5 weeks to wide receivers. You're obviously starting Andre Johnson, but consider Kevin Walter against the Jaguars. Jacksonville has given up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year, and at least 1 touchdown in all but 1 week this whole year. Now let's get to the players you should bench this week. The 49ers give up a lot of yards through the air, but over the last 5 weeks, they've only given up 2 touchdowns to quarterbacks. Keep Matt Hasselbeck and your Seattle wide receivers on your bench. With Matt Ryan out for the Falcons and Chris Redmond starting, consider Roddy White as a low-end number 2 wide receiver. You might even say, as Redman's saying himself, it's time for some benching action with White. Don't go anywhere near Beanie Wells or Tim Hightower against the Vikings, who have the number 1 rushing defense in the league, especially if Matt Leinart is starting for a concussed Kurt Warner. Now let's get to the players you should think about this week. With Vince Young's reemergence, Kenny Britt has become a viable wide receiver. He had 128 receiving yards last week and has scored in 2 straight games. Consider him as a number 3 wide receiver against the Colts. With Deshaun Jackson likely out with a concussion this week, Jason Avant becomes a starter in Philadelphia. He's split snaps over the last 3 weeks and has gotten over 90 yards in 2 of those. Consider him a very sneaky number 2 and number 3 wide receiver. And if you're looking for a deeper sleeper, with Jamal Lewis out for the season, Chris Jennings becomes a decent flex play against a mediocre Chargers defense. That's right, I'm recommending him Brown. Now let's get to some email. Dear Alex, I heard a rumor that you used to be a Jets fan. Congratulations on finding your way over from the dark side. I live in New York and many of my closest friends support the New Jersey Jets. Can you talk about how making the switch has been the best thing you've ever done in the hopes that one of them may follow? Thanks, Jay. Well, Jay, you need to find yourself a good woman who's a Miami Dolphins fan that can convince you that following the Jets is a horrible, horrible idea. That's it for this week, guys. Remember to check out DolfansNYC.com for all of your latest Dolphins news. If you want to send us an email, send it to DolfansNYC@gmail.com to be included in next week's video. We've got a huge matchup against the Patriots this week, and as you might be able to tell, I'm pretty ready. Until next week, I'm Alex with What's Your Fantasy.
Hey, sweetie, you want to tell them where they can watch the games in New York City?
Why, yes, I do. Check us out at 3rd and Long on 35th Street and 3rd Avenue every week for every Dolphins game. Go Dolphins!